November 14, 1931, 11:47 p.m. Kaiserhof Hotel, Berlin. A heavy-set man in a brown shirt leans over a polished mockwood table, his knuckles white against the wood. Smoke curls from a dozen cigarettes abandoned in brass trays. The room smells of sweat, cheap cognac, and desperation. Outside, the city shivers under freezing rain. Inside, 37 men, bankers, industrialists, former generals, newspaper magnates wait in silence as one figure paces before them, his voice rising and falling like a conductor before an orchestra of ruined Thyssen papers. Bundes, Koblenz, 1931. He promises order, he promises jobs, he promises revenge. His name is Adolf Hitler, and in this moment, he is not yet a dictator. He is a candidate, a rabble-rouser, clawing his way toward legitimacy, one backroom deal at a time. The men in this room do not love him. They feared the communists more. Germany, in the autumn of 1931, is a nation suspended between collapse and explosion. 6 million unemployed. Reich Labor Ministry report, October 1931. Banks failing weekly. The middle-class doctors, teachers, shopkeepers watching their savings evaporate into hyperinflation's ghost. The Weimar Republic, born from the ashes of the Great War, bleeds from 1,000 cuts. War reparations, political assassinations, street battles between the brown shirts of the SA and the red banners of the Communist Party. Democracy, to many Germans, feels like a luxury they can no longer afford. And into this vacuum steps a man who has spent a decade refining his message, his image, his machinery of persuasion. Hitler is 42 years old, a failed artist, a decorated corporal from the trenches of the Great War, a spellbinding orator who can hold a beer hall crowd for 2 hours without notes. By late 1931, his National Socialist German Workers' Party, the NSDAP, the Nazis, has transformed from a fringe movement of beer hall brawlers into the second largest party in the Reichstag, with 107 seats, won in the September 1930 elections. Reichstag election archive. 1930. He did not achieve this through votes alone. He built a machine. The machinery is relentless. Joseph Goebbels, Hitler's propaganda chief in Berlin, orchestrates a media blitz unlike anything German politics has ever seen. Posters plaster every street corner, stark, bold, repetitive. Hitler, aber Deutschland, Hitler, over Germany. The slogan is everywhere, on matchboxes, beer coasters, storefront windows, radio speeches, carefully timed for maximum evening listenership. Bypass traditional gatekeepers. Rallies in Munich, Nuremberg, Hamburg, torchlit spectacles choreographed down to the second, where Hitler arrives late, building anticipation, then explodes onto the stage to a roar of Sieg Heil that shakes the rafters. Goebbels' diary. November 1931, Institute for Contemporary History, Munich. It is theater. It is religion. It is politics fused into something new and terrifying. Funding flows. From where, exactly, remains murky. Historians will argue for decades, but the money is undeniable. Fritz Thyssen, steel magnate, channels funds through shadowy intermediaries. Thyssen interrogation. OSS records, 1945. Wealthy landowners in East Prussia, terrified of communist land seizures, write checks. The SA, Hitler's paramilitary arm, swells to 400,000 men by year's end, fed, uniformed, organized into units that marched in lockstep through German cities, projecting strength, intimidating rivals, beating communists and socialists in alleyways when the police look away. Some membership rolls. Bundesarchiv, 1931. They are not yet in power. They are practicing for it. But this is not a story of inevitability. In November 1931, Hitler's rise is far from assured. President Paul von Hindenburg, the 84-year-old war hero, despises him, calls him that bohemian corporal in private Hindenburg correspondence. November 1931, German Federal Archives. Chancellor Heinrich Brüning governs by emergency decree, sidelining the Reichstag, trying to hold the center against extremes. The Social Democrats and the Catholic Center Party still command millions of votes. The Communists, under orders from Moscow, refuse to ally with anyone, convinced that capitalism's collapse will deliver them power without compromise. Comintern directives. November 1931, Russian State Archive. Germany's political establishment believes it can contain Hitler, use him, even as a blunt instrument against the left, then discard him when convenient. They are catastrophically wrong. What they do not yet understand is that Hitler has learned the rules of the game and is rewriting them. He campaigns on contradictions, promising workers bread and capitalists order, appealing to nationalists and socialists simultaneously, a shapeshifter who tells each audience exactly what it wants to hear. His speeches are masterpieces of vagueness, on policy, specificity, on emotion. He does not offer a 10th-point economic plan. He offers a scapegoat: Jews, Marxists, the Treaty of Versailles, the November criminals who signed the armistice in 1918. He channels Germany's humiliation, its rage, its longing for greatness, and focuses it all into a single, seductive narrative. You were betrayed. I will restore you. Follow me. Hitler campaign speech transcript, November 1931. Hoover Institution archives are there beginning to follow. Not just the unemployed, not just the thugs and the fanatics. Teachers, veterans, farmers crushed by debt, small-town mayors, university students, women drawn to rallies in surprising numbers, captivated by the pageantry, the uniforms, the promise of a strong leader in chaotic times. Demographic analysis of NSDAP membership, 1930-1932, Institute for Social Research. The Nazi Party is becoming a mass movement, and mass movements, once in motion, are nearly impossible to stop. In the Kaiserhof Hotel, the meeting ends after midnight. The industrialists file out, some nodding, some frowning, all calculating. Hitler watches them go, then turns to Goebbels, who scribbles notes for tomorrow's rally. The rain has stopped. Berlin sleeps uneasily. Across the city, communist cells plot, social democrats argue, and in cold apartments, families huddle around radios, wondering if the chaos will ever end. It will end, but not the way they hope. What these men, these democrats, these pragmatists, these believers in reason and law do not yet grasp is that Hitler possesses an advantage none of them can match. An arsenal not of guns, but of something far more dangerous. Something modern warfare and modern tyranny would soon reveal as the ultimate weapon in the age of mass politics. And in the months to come, as Germany hurtles toward its darkest hour, this hidden edge will prove unstoppable. The weapon is not steel. It is psychology, amplified by technology, industrialized into a machine of manipulation that operates on a scale no democracy has ever faced. January 1932. The Sportpalast Arena in Berlin holds 16,000 bodies packed shoulder to shoulder, but another 2 million listen through radio sets crackling in living rooms. Across Germany, Reich Broadcasting Corporation listener survey, January 1932, Deutsches Rundfunk. Joseph Goebbels, 34 years old, a failed novelist with a clubfoot and a genius for mass persuasion, stands in the control booth of the Nazi propaganda apparatus and understands what the Social Democrats and the Communists do not. Modern politics is no longer about convincing individuals through rational debate. It is about creating emotional contagion, about engineering crowds, about using repetition and spectacle to bypass the thinking mind entirely and speak directly to fear, hope, rage, and belonging. Goebbels, Knowledge and Propaganda. Essay draft, January 1932. Federal Archive, Berlin. The Nazis did not invent propaganda. They perfected it. Every element is calculated. Hitler's plane chartered at enormous expense, a Junkers Ru 52 trimotor that roars over German cities. Trailing banners creates the image of a leader descending from the sky, modern, powerful, everywhere at once. NSDAP flight logs, 1932, Bundeswehr. The Hitler over Germany campaign flies him to 4 cities in a single day, an impossible feat by train, photographed at every stop. The pictures rushed to newspapers by motorcycle courier within hours. It is 1932, and Hitler is using aviation to collapse time and space, to seem omnipresent, to project energy that makes his aging opponents look exhausted by comparison. Otto Dietrich, with Hitler on the campaign trail. 1934. The rallies themselves are Wagnerian spectacles engineered to overwhelm the senses. Albert Speer, a young architect with no political convictions but an eye for dramatic spaces, designs the staging, cathedral searchlights borrowed from the Luftwaffe, stabbing upward into night sky, creating pillars of light visible for miles. The Cathedral of Light, effect that turns Nuremberg into a temple spear. Inside the Third Reich, Interrogation notes, 1945. Massed formations, synchronized chants, drums pounding like artillery. And then, after an hour of building tension, Hitler appears always late, always anticipated, and the crowd erupts. The individual disappears. The mob becomes one organism, breathing together, roaring together, surrendering thought for sensation. U.S. Embassy Berlin Observer Report, September 1932, National Archives. But the most insidious advantage is radio. By 1932, Germany has 4 million radio sets, and the Nazis exploit the medium with surgical precision. Reich Broadcasting Statistics, 1932, German Postal Ministry Archive. Hitler's voice, harsh and hypnotic, fills kitchens and workshops. Goebbels arranges for loudspeakers in public squares, so even those without radios hear the message. The repetition is relentless, not just Hitler's speeches, but Nazi marching songs, say anthems, short propaganda bulletins inserted between music programs. The human brain, neuroscience would later confirm, responds to repeated messages by accepting them as true regardless of content. The Nazis discovered this empirically, through trial and error, and weaponized it. Harold Laszlo. Propaganda technique in World War I, 1927. Comparative analysis. The Social Democrats produce pamphlets. The Nazis produce emotional experiences. A dramatized composite account from a Munich art teacher, recorded years later, captures the effect. I didn't consider myself political, but my neighbors attended a rally, and they came back, changed, energized. They played the records of Hitler's speeches at gatherings. My husband said we should at least listen. I thought I would be unmoved, but there was something, the certainty in his voice, the way he spoke our frustrations, as if he'd lived them. By the third rally, I wore the pins. So paid reports in exile, 1934 to 1936. Social Democratic underground intelligence on Nazi recruitment patterns. The targeting is sophisticated. Goebbels divides Germany into regions, demographics, professions. Farmers in Bavaria receive different messaging than factory workers in the Ruhr-Same core narrative. Adjusted emphasis. NSDAP, Regional Propaganda Directives, 1932, Institute for Contemporary History. To rural communities, Hitler promises debt relief and protection from Jewish bankers. To veterans, restoration of military honor and revenge for Versailles. To women, family values and order. To the unemployed, work and bread. To business owners, suppression of strikes and communism. The contradictions don't matter because each audience hears only its message, delivered through targeted rallies, regional newspapers, local essay chapters who canvass door-to-door with disciplined precision. Elizabeth Noah. The Spiral of Silence, Retrospective Analysis of 1932 Campaign Tactics, 1974, March 13, 1932. The Presidential Election First Round. Hitler challenges Hindenburg directly, an audacious gamble for a man who became a German citizen only weeks earlier through a bureaucratic maneuver in Brunswick Naturalization Papers. February 26, 1932, Brunswick State Archive. The establishment expects Hitler to be crushed. Hindenburg, the legendary field marshal, the symbol of old Germany, will surely destroy this upstart. The results stun the nation. Hindenburg, 18.6 million votes. Hitler, 11.3 million. Reich Election Commission, March 1932. Official results. The Nazi candidate, a foreigner by birth, a corporal, a party that barely existed 12 years ago, captures 30% of Germany's vote in a single leap. The runoff election on April 10 increases Hitler's total to 13.4 million. 36.8% of all ballots cast. Reich Election Commission, April 1932. He loses, but the loss is a triumph. The myth of momentum becomes reality. The brown shirts march through Berlin, singing victory songs despite defeat, and the establishment panics. Chancellor Brüning, desperate to contain the Nazi surge, bans the SA on April 13. 400,000 stormtroopers ordered to disband, to surrender their uniforms. Emergency decree, April 13, 1932. Reichs. It is a catastrophic miscalculation. The ban lasts 6 weeks before political pressure forces its reversal, and the SA returns to the streets, more aggressive than before. Their persecution narrative validated. Their ranks swelling with recruits convinced the government fears them. SA membership growth chart. May-July 1932. Bundeswehr. Violence escalates. Between June and July 1932, Street battles between Nazis and communists kill 86 people in Prussia alone. Prussian Interior Ministry report. July 1932. The Weimar Republic is devouring itself. July 31, 1932. Reichstag elections. The Nazis campaign with inhuman intensity. Goebbels organizes 3,000 rallies in the final 10 days. Hitler delivers 20 major speeches. The propaganda machine runs at maximum capacity. Goebbels' diary. July 28 to 31, 1932. The results are an earthquake. The NSDAP wins 37.3% of the vote, 230 seats, the largest party in the Reichstag. Though not a majority. Reich Election Commission. July 1932. Official results. Germany's government is now dependent on a party openly contemptuous of parliamentary democracy. President Hindenburg still refuses to appoint Hitler as Chancellor. The aristocratic circle around the elderly president, men like Franz von Papen, Kurt von Schleicher, generals and landowners, believe they can control Hitler by offering him a subordinate position, by boxing him into coalition constraints. Papen Memoirs, interrogation transcripts. Nuremberg, 1946. Hitler refuses. He will accept nothing less than total power. The stalemate holds through summer, into autumn. Another election is called for November 6th. The Nazis lose ground, 33.1%, down 4 percentage points. Their first retreat. Reich Election Commission, November 1932. Some observers breathe easier. Perhaps the fever has broken. Perhaps Hitler has peaked. They are reading the numbers. They are not reading the moment. What Hitler understands, and what the democratic politicians fatally underestimate, is that his true advantage is not votes, it is will. The Nazis will not compromise, will not negotiate in good faith, will not accept anything less than dominance. They have created a cult of leadership that makes retreat impossible. Goebbels writes in his diary, "We will not tire, we will not yield. If they deny us the front door, we will find the side entrance." Goebbels' diary. November 10, 1932. The establishment plays by rules. Hitler plays to win. Behind closed doors, the calculations shift. Von Papen, humiliated by his own electoral failures, whispers to Hindenburg, appoint Hitler as Chancellor, but cage him with traditional conservatives in the cabinet. Vice-Chancellor Papen, Defense Minister von Blomberg, Foreign Minister von Neurothrillable men who restrain the radical Schleicher-Hindenburg correspondence. January 1933. Federal Archive. We will tame the tyrant, they tell themselves. We will use his movement's energy, then guide it toward respectability. January 30, 1933. 11 a.m. Adolf Hitler walks into the Chancellery as the leader of Germany. The taming will not happen. February 27, 1933. 9:14 p.m. The Reichstag building erupts in flames. Smoke pours from the copper dome. Visible across Berlin, tongues of fire consuming the chamber where German democracy held its last fragile breath. Police arrest a Dutch communist named Marinus van der Lubbe at the scene, his clothes reeking of fire, his guilt debated by historians for decades, but guilt is irrelevant. Berlin Fire Brigade report. February 27, 1933. Land search of Berlin. What matters is the weapon Hitler has been sharpening for 12 years, and how swiftly it moves from psychological dominance to absolute control. By midnight, he sits across from President Hindenburg, voice urgent, eyes alight. This is a communist uprising. We must act immediately. Emergency powers. For the safety of the nation. Cabinet meeting minutes. February 28, 1933. Bundesarchiv. Hindenburg signs. The Reichstag fire decree, issued February 28, suspends civil liberties indefinitely. Freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, freedom of the press. Habeas corpus all dissolved with a stroke of the pen. Reichsgesetzblatt. February 28, 1933. It is presented as temporary. It will never be rescinded. Within hours, stormtroopers drag 4,000 communists, socialists, and trade unionists from their beds. The Camp Dachau opens March 22. Begin filling with political prisoners. Dachau registration logs. March 1933. Arolsen archives. The taming has reversed. The tyrant is loose. March 23, 1933. The Enabling Act. Passes the Reichstag. 356 votes in favor, 94 against, granting Hitler dictatorial power to enact laws without parliamentary approval for 4 years. Reichstag voting record. March 23, 1933. The Social Democrats vote no. their leader Otto Wels delivering a final doomed speech about freedom and conscience. The communists are absent, arrested, or in hiding. The Catholic Centre Party, the last democratic pillar, caves under promises Hitler will not keep, and threats the essay makes explicit. Wels' speech transcript. March 23, 1933, SPD archive. Germany's democracy votes itself into extinction. The machinery Hitler built, the propaganda, the spectacle, the manufactured momentum, the psychological exhaustion of endless crisis, has achieved what military coups and palace intrigues could not. The people, or enough of them, have chosen the tyrant willingly. The taming was always a fantasy. The men who believed they could control Hitler. Papenhugenberg. The conservative nationalists discover too late that they have not hired a guard dog but invited a wolf into the fold. By July 14, 1933, all political parties except the NSDAP are banned. Law against the formation of new parties. July 14, 1933, Reichsgesetz. By the end of the year, trade unions are dissolved, replaced by the Nazi Labor Front. Newspapers conform or close. Radio becomes purely an instrument of state messaging. Now, Minister of Propaganda and Public Enlightenment mandates cheap radio receivers, the Volks, to flood every German home with the party's voice. Reich broadcasting policy. August 1933, Deutsches Rundfunk. The weapon that brought Hitler to power now consolidates it, operating at industrial scale. The psychological impact radiates outward in concentric circles of fear and complicity. A dramatized composite based on post-war testimonies. You learned not to speak, not at work, not at the cafe, not even at home if your children attended the Hitler Youth. Neighbors reported neighbors. A careless joke about the Führer could mean a visit from the Gestapo. It wasn't that everyone believed, it was that disbelief became too dangerous to express, so paid reports. 1934 to 1938. Post-war interviews, Institut für Zeit. The propaganda machine does not require universal belief. It requires universal silence from dissenters, and fervent enthusiasm from enough believers to create the illusion of unanimity. The spiral of silence effect, later theorized by sociologists, operates in real time. Perceived majority opinion suppresses minority voices, which in turn reinforces the perceived majority, creating a self-fulfilling prophecy of conformity. Gestapo arrest records. 1933 to 1939. Analysis by Robert Gellatley. Backing Hitler. 2001. The camps expand. Dachau, Sachsenhausen, Buchenwald. Not yet the extermination centers of the Holocaust, but laboratories of terror where political enemies, Jehovah's Witnesses, homosexuals, Roma, and increasingly Jews, disappear into a system designed to break human beings. Concentration camp administration files. 1933 to 1939. Arolsen archives. The camps are not hidden. Their existence is publicized, a deterrent, a promise. This is what happens to enemies of the state. The fear is the point. The machinery of manipulation evolves into a machinery of annihilation, and the engineers who built the former Goebbels, Heydrich, managed the latter with bureaucratic efficiency. Nuremberg trial testimony. 1945 to 1946. Document PS 1919. June 30, 1934. The Night of the Long Knives. Hitler, consolidating power, turns on his own. Ernst Röhm, the SA chief who commanded the brownshirts through the street battles and the rallies, is arrested and executed along with 85 other SA leaders, conservative opponents, and old rivals. Some estimates place the death toll above 200 SS after action reports. July 1934. Bundeswehr. Gestapo files. The pretext, a fabricated SA coup plot. The reality, the army demands the SA's paramilitary power be broken, and Hitler needs the general's loyalty more than Röhm's stormtroopers. Hindenburg Hitler correspondence. July 1934. The purge is swift, brutal, the message is clear. Even loyalty to Hitler offers no protection if the Führer deems it necessary. Fear deepens, opposition evaporates. August 2, 1934. President Hindenburg dies at age 86. Within hours, Hitler merges the presidency with the chancellorship, declaring himself Führer under Reichskanzlerleader and Chancellor, and demands a personal oath of loyalty from every soldier in the Wehrmacht law concerning the head of state. August 1, 1934. Enacted August 2nd. The military swears allegiance not to Germany, not to the Constitution, but to Adolf Hitler personally. Wehrmacht oath. August 2, 1934. The tyrant is no longer constrained by any institution. The taming is complete, but it is Hitler who has tamed Germany, not the reverse. The strategic impact reshapes Europe. Hitler's domestic triumph emboldens his foreign ambitions. March 1935. Rearmament announced openly, violating Versailles Proclamation of conscription. March 16, 1935. March 1936. Remilitarization of the Rhineland. German troops marching into territory forbidden to them. France and Britain protesting but not acting. Wehrmacht operational orders. March 7, 1936. Bundeswehr. March 1938. Anschluss Austria absorbed into the Reich. Cheering crowds in Vienna welcoming the tyrant they might have resisted had democratic Europe shown resolve. Earlier newsreel footage. March 12, 1938. September 1938. Munich Agreement. Czechoslovakia carved apart, while Chamberlain proclaims peace for our time. Munich Conference Protocol. September 29, 1938. Each success validates the propaganda, proves the Führer's genius, tightens the psychological grip on the German people. The weapon that built the dictatorship now fuels the war machine, and the war machine devours the world. September 1, 1939. Poland. Then the abyss. France, the Low Countries, the Balkans, the invasion of the Soviet Union, the Holocaust, the systematic murder of 6 million Jews and millions of others. Roma, disabled, Slavs, political prisoners, Soviet postal executed by a regime that began not with tanks but with rallies, not with bullets but with radio broadcasts, not with conquest but with the corruption of a democracy too exhausted, too divided, too confident in its own rationality to recognize the threat until it was too late. Wannsee Conference Protocol. January 20, 1942. Hayfel Telegram. January 1943. Nuremberg Trial Evidence. 1945 to 1946. The cost is incomprehensible. 50 million dead in Europe alone by 1945. R.J. Mall. Democide, Nazi genocide and mass murder. 1992. Germany itself left in ruins, cities obliterated, a generation lost, the nation divided for half a century. The tyrant who promised restoration delivered annihilation. The machinery of psychological manipulation, built by Goebbels and perfected by modern technology, becomes the template for every authoritarian regime that follows. Stalin's cult of personality, Mao's Cultural Revolution, North Korea's Hermit Kingdom, the digital surveillance states of the 21st century. All study the Nazi playbook. All understand that controlling information and emotion is more powerful than controlling territory. Hannah Arendt. The Origins of Totalitarianism. 1951. Timothy Snyder. On Tyranny. 2017. The engineers of Hitler's rise left a bitter legacy. Goebbels in the four-bunker poisons his 6 children and commits suicide as the Red Army closes in. April 1945. Soviet intelligence report. May 2, 1945. Russian State Archive. Speer survives Nuremberg, serves 20 years, writes memoirs claiming ignorance. The technocrat who built the stage for mass murder. Speer trial testimony. Nuremberg, 1946. Millions of ordinary Germans, the teachers and clerks and factory workers who attended the rallies, who repeated the slogans, who looked away from the disappearances, spend the rest of their lives grappling with complicity or denial. Alexander and Marguerite Mitschulik. The inability to mourn. 1967. The question that haunted 1931. Berlin echoes across the decades. Can a tyrant be tamed, or does the attempt to use authoritarianism for pragmatic ends only empower it? History delivered a verdict written in ash and blood. The men who thought they could control Hitler, the industrialists, the aristocrats, the conservative politicians, did not tame the tyrant. They unlocked